The Royal Navy's arduous and audacious climb to, and maintenance of, global naval supremacy. Prologue. The Seeds of Sea Power pre-1588. The story of the Royal Navy does not begin with a structured institution, but with a geographical and political necessity. England, an island on the periphery of Europe, found its destiny and its security on the waves. Before a Navy Royal existed, its role was filled by merchant vessels and privateers, state-sanctioned pirates. The Tudor Revolution. King Henry VIII, a Renaissance monarch, is often called the father of the Royal Navy. He invested heavily in warship construction, establishing dedicated naval dockyards at Portsmouth, Deptford, and Woolwich. More importantly, he championed the building of ships designed not just as troop transports, but as gun platforms, mounting heavy, long-range cannon and broadsides. The Elizabethan Sea-Dogs. Under Queen Elizabeth I, this nascent sea power was wielded by a cadre of brilliant, ruthless, and profoundly bold mariners. Men like Sir Francis Drake, Sir John Hawkins, and Sir Martin Frobisher took the fight to the seemingly invincible Spanish Empire. Boldness in action. Drake's audacious circumnavigation 1577–1580 was a voyage of discovery, but also one of spectacular plunder. His 1587 raid on Cadiz, singeing the King of Spain's beard, destroyed dozens of ships and vital supplies, delaying the Spanish Armada by a crucial year. This was not a set-piece battle, it was a preemptive strike of breathtaking impudence. The first great test, the Spanish Armada, 1588. The arrival of the 130-ship Armada was an existential threat. The English response defined their naval ethos for centuries to come. The English fleet, commanded by Lord Howard of Effingham with Drake as his vice-admiral, was composed of more nimble, weatherly ships. They possessed fewer guns overall, but their artillery was of a longer range and could be reloaded and fired faster. The battle was not a single, decisive engagement, but a running fight up the English Channel. The English captains refused to close in for the traditional melee. Instead, they used their superior seamanship and gunnery to harass the Spanish crescent formation, picking off stragglers and disrupting their cohesion. The final blow was delivered by English fireships sent into the anchored Armada at Calais, causing panic and dispersal, leading to the climactic Battle of Gravelines. The subsequent Protestant wind finished the job, scattering the wrecked fleet around the British Isles. The lesson: victory was achieved through a combination of superior ship design, revolutionary tactics, and the aggressive, relentless spirit of the captains. England had survived, and a naval power was born. The forging of a professional force, doctrine and discipline 1642–1714. The 17th century was the crucible in which the ad hoc Tudor Navy was transformed into a permanent, professional fighting force. This period was defined by civil war, republican rule, and a series of brutal conflicts with the Dutch, who were then the world's premier commercial and naval power. The Commonwealth Navy. Under Oliver Cromwell, the Navy was expanded and rigorously professionalized. Admiral Robert Blake, a soldier-turned-sailor, became one of its greatest heroes. He rewrote the fighting instructions, codifying the most revolutionary naval tactic of the age, the line of battle. The line of battle. This doctrine dictated that warships form a single, disciplined line, sailing one behind the other to unleash their full broadside firepower. This was not a defensive measure, it was a way to concentrate force, maintain command and control, and systematically dismantle the enemy. It demanded iron discipline from every captain. The Samuel Pepys era. After the restoration of the monarchy in 1660, Samuel Pepys, as Secretary to the Admiralty, became the Navy's administrative genius. He instituted reforms in shipbuilding, logistics, finance, and officer recruitment. He created a corps of professional, career naval officers, laying the bureaucratic foundation for a permanent, global navy. The Royal Navy was now an institution, not just a wartime fleet. The victories and losses against the Dutch proved the value of this professionalism. The era culminated in the Glorious Revolution of 1688, where the Navy peacefully transported the army of William of Orange to England, altering the course of British history without a shot being fired from its ships. The struggle for supremacy, the 18th century grind. The long 18th century was a near-continuous global struggle with France. The prize was not just European dominance, but a worldwide empire. This century of war produced a hardened officer corps and a brutal, resilient breed of sailor. The system and its flaws. The Navy was the pride of the nation, but life within it was harsh. Manning was done through the brutal press gang, which forced men into service. Discipline was maintained by the lash and the noose. Yet, this system produced crews of unparalleled toughness and skill. Anson's voyage and global reach. The epic, circumnavigating voyage of Commodore George Anson, 1740–1744, was a testament to this toughness. Though his squadron was decimated by scurvy and storm, his capture of a Spanish treasure galleon made him a national hero and proved the Navy could project power to the farthest corners of the globe. The 7 Years' War, 1756–1763. This was the war that established Britain as the global hegemon, and the Navy was its cornerstone. The era belonged to admirals like Edward Hawke and Edward Boscawen, men of relentless aggression. Quiberon Bay, 1759. In what was perhaps the most daring naval action of the century, Admiral Hawke, pursuing a French fleet, chased it into the treacherous, rocky shoals of Quiberon Bay in a full gale. Conventional wisdom forbade such a risk. Hawke's response was simple: where there is room for an enemy ship to swing, there is room for one of mine to anchor. His victory in the storm-lashed shallows annihilated the French fleet and ended any threat of a French invasion of Britain. It was a victory of pure, calculated boldness over caution. The apotheosis of boldness, Horatio Nelson and Trafalgar. The French Revolutionary and Napoleonic Wars, 1793–1815, saw the Royal Navy reach its zenith. It faced the combined might of France, Spain, and the Netherlands, and it did so with a commander who embodied the aggressive spirit of the service, Vice Admiral Horatio Lord Nelson. Nelson was the perfect fusion of tactical genius, personal charisma, and relentless offensive spirit. He took the rigid line of battle and infused it with a new, devastating principle: the annihilation of the enemy. 1. The Battle of the Nile, 1798. Nelson hunted Napoleon's fleet across the Mediterranean for months. He finally found it anchored in a strong defensive position in Aboukir Bay, Egypt. The French commander believed his flank was protected by the shore. As night fell, Nelson attacked without hesitation. Captain Thomas Foley, leading the line, deduced that if there was room for a French ship to swing at its anchor, there was room for a British ship to inshore of it. Nelson's fleet sailed on both sides of the French line, unleashing a devastating crossfire. By morning, the French fleet was utterly destroyed. Napoleon's army was stranded. It was a victory that stunned Europe and showcased Nelson's boldness and the initiative he instilled in his captains, his band of brothers. 2. Copenhagen, 1801. Facing a powerful Danish fleet protected by shore batteries and treacherous shallows, the British attack began to falter under heavy fire. The commander-in-chief, Sir Hyde Parker, signaled for Nelson to disengage. In one of the most famous acts of insubordination in military history, Nelson raised his telescope to his blind eye and declared, "I really do not see the signal." He pressed the attack and compelled the Danes to surrender. This was not mere disobedience, it was the ultimate expression of a commander on the scene trusting his judgment and his men's courage over the caution of a distant superior. 3. Trafalgar, 1805. The culmination of his career and the decisive battle for naval supremacy. Facing a combined French-Spanish fleet, Nelson abandoned the line of battle entirely. He devised a supremely risky plan. His fleet would form two columns and sail directly perpendicular at the enemy line, enduring devastating broadsides without being able to return fire until they broke through. This, Nelson touch, was a gamble of breathtaking audacity. The risk was the destruction of the lead ships before they could engage. The reward was the total collapse of the enemy formation in a melee where the superior gunnery and seamanship of the British would tell. His signal to the fleet, "England expects that every man will do his duty," galvanized the fleet. The victory was absolute. Not a single British ship was lost, while the Franco-Spanish fleet was annihilated. Nelson was mortally wounded, but his legacy was secured. Trafalgar ended forever Napoleon's dreams of invading Britain and established a British naval supremacy so complete it would go unchallenged for a century. It was the ultimate victory of bold men. Pax Britannica. The Imperial Policeman, 1815–1914. After 1815, the Royal Navy entered its golden age of dominance, the Pax Britannica. With no serious rivals, its role shifted from fleet destruction to global power projection and imperial policing. Suppressing the slave trade, For much of the 19th century, the Navy's primary mission was to hunt down and capture slave ships off the coast of Africa, a difficult and often thankless task. Enforcing global order, the Navy protected the sea lanes that carried British trade, putting down piracy and intervening in conflicts from China, the Opium Wars, to the Crimea. The Technological Revolution. This era saw the most profound revolution in naval warfare since the sail. The shift from wood to iron and steel, from sail to steam, and from smoothbore cannon to rifled, explosive shell-firing guns. The launch of HMS Warrior in 1860, an iron-hulled, steam and sail-powered warship, made every other battleship in the world obsolete overnight. The Navy's challenge was to maintain its supremacy not just through numbers, but through relentless technological innovation. The challenges of the 20th century and beyond. The 20th century saw the rise of new, industrial-scale rivals: Wilhelmine Germany, Imperial Japan, the Soviet Union. The Dreadnought Race. In 1906, Britain again reset the global standard by launching HMS Dreadnought. Its all-big gun design and turbine engines made all previous battleships obsolete. This sparked a frantic naval arms race with Germany, a test of industrial and national will that Britain was determined to win. World War I. Jutland 1916. The Great Fleet clash with the German High Seas Fleet was tactically inconclusive. The British Grand Fleet suffered heavier losses. But strategically, it was a decisive British victory. The German fleet, after its mauling, never again challenged the Grand Fleet in a major battle. British naval supremacy, and its blockade of Germany, held firm. World War II. The ultimate test. This was the Navy's hardest war. It fought a multi-theater global conflict against Germany, Italy, and Japan. From the evacuation of Dunkirk and the Battle of the Atlantic against the U-boats, to the carrier operations in the Pacific and the amphibious landings from North Africa to D-Day, the Navy was engaged in a relentless, existential struggle. The cost was horrific: over 50,000 sailors killed, but its success in keeping Britain supplied and projecting Allied power was fundamental to ultimate victory. Conclusion. The legacy of the bold. The Royal Navy's supremacy was not a historical accident. It was forged over centuries by 1. Bold commanders. From Drake's piracy to Nelson's genius, the Navy rewarded audacity and aggressive tactical thinking. 2. Professional institutions. The administrative reforms of Pepys and the doctrinal clarity of the fighting instructions created a stable foundation for boldness to flourish. 3. Technological innovation. From the broadside galleon to the dreadnought, the Navy consistently pushed the boundaries of naval architecture and armament. 4. Global reach and logistics. The ability to build, supply, and maintain fleets across the world's oceans was an unsung but critical component of its power. 5. The hearts of oak. Ultimately, supremacy was won by the skill, resilience, and courage of the common sailor, who manned the guns in hellish conditions and sailed into the unknown. The era of unchallenged supremacy is past, but the legacy of those bold men endures in the traditions, professionalism, and global role of the modern Royal Navy, a service shaped irrevocably by its centuries-long struggle for, and victory in, winning command of the sea.